off we go. All right. So lesson 1.6. Working up to where we are today, we've done a lot with fractions, converting units, comparing units. So this takes it a step farther than that. We are going to do a little dimensional analysis, but we're going to be comparing like, I bought a used Volkswagen Bug the other day. Good price, but it needed work. Okay. The person who owned it before didn't do the proper maintenance. They let things go. So if you have a car, things go wrong, right? Like my water pump went the other day, that cost me $500. Tires, I got a flat and the tire was ruined from what I hit. The car I have has all-wheel drive, so if one goes, you gotta replace them all. That was $1,000 for another set of tires, for winter tires, right? Not just like summer ones. Shit happens. So when you drive a car, it's really not just gas. You got to register it, you got to pay insurance, you got maintenance, you got to change the oil once in a while. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, if we add up all that other shit we have to pay to drive a car, what's it really cost to drive a car? Right. So that's what we're going to calculate. Right. And so you can do this for your own car later to see how much does it cost for me to drive a car. And I'm going to go over this again with my 18-year-old daughter who still doesn't quite get it. All right. So the deal here is Jenna has a 2006 Toyota 4Runner. Great vehicle, but it uses a lot of gas. She's got to go on a trip, and she could rent a car instead to go on the work trip. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and figure out, given all the other things it costs Jenna to have that Toyota 4Runner, what's the real cost for driving that versus the cost of the rental car, which is the better deal. Okay. Given that Jenna had to register the car, she's got to pay insurance for the car, she had to buy tires for the car, she's got to change the oil once in a while. So we're going to factor all that in and see what happens. Okay, so it's going to be a little bit of work to do that. So with all the stuff I just spewed out there, what I'd want you to do is write your opinion for question number 1. What do you need to know to calculate the cost of Jenna driving her own car? And then what do you need to know to calculate the cost of Jenna renting a car? So just write down your opinion on those 2 things. There's no right or wrong answer. Just write something. So I'll give you a minute to write. Okay, so hopefully I had a chance to write some opinions for question 1 and 2. And again, it's just an opinion. There's no right or wrong answer there. We've got gas mileage is rated for either city or highway driving. Most of Jenna's travel will take place on the highway. For her next trip, she needs to drive 193 miles from home and then return. The price of gas is $3.50. Ooh, that's pretty good. Her 4Runner gets 22 miles per gallon. Not great. It's about the same as my Subaru. I like my Subaru, but the gas mileage sucks. If Jenna rents, she can request a small fuel-efficient car like a Hyundai Elantra, which gets 40 miles to the gallon. I would like that. That cheap Beetle I bought, it's supposed to get like 45 miles to the gallon if it's running right. So I'm curious. I haven't figured that out yet. I haven't had it long enough. It's a 1999 Beetle, by the way, which is like the second year, I think, of the new style Beetle that came out. It was pretty beat up, but I'm gonna fix it up. It's gonna be cute. So first we want to estimate. So given the information about how far she's going to drive, how much gas costs for her 4Runner, and how much gas costs for the Hyundai Elantra, make a guess without writing much down on paper about how much it's going to cost her to do this trip with that information for her 4Runner and how much it's going to cost for the Elantra. Now, just writing your estimate down, you have enough room here, but explaining your strategy, there's not really enough room there. So you might need another piece of paper to write that on. And again, for the estimation, there is no right or wrong answer. It's an estimate. Whatever you come up with is fine. We're going to do the real calculation next, but I want you to just guess. And then if you can, tell me something about how you made that guess. After you try, I'll give you my guess. Adrian, morning. Here you go. This is what we're working on. So these were just opinion questions. People were working on that. So we're working on this paragraph right now, where we're going to try and estimate. She has to drive 193 miles there and back. It's $3.50 for gas. Her Forerunner gets 22 miles per gallon. Or she could rent a Hyundai Electra, which gets 40 miles per gallon. We're trying to estimate about how much it's going to cost the Forerunner to make this trip and how much it's going to cost the Elantra. All right. All right. So that's what we're thinking about right now. That's question 3A, and then we'll do 3B together in a minute. Resume. All right, so if you took more than like 5 minutes to come up with an estimate, that means you're thinking too hard about what the real answer is and you're too nervous to be wrong. Opening of this class, I said, don't afraid to be wrong. I know it's easy to say, but it's hard to do. So here's my guess. My estimate is $50 for the Toyota. And the Hyundai should be cheaper. I'm going to guess $30 for the Hyundai. I just spelled Hyundai. That's there somewhere. Hyundai. There we go. Explain my strategy. Wild or random guess? I don't know. Just throwing that out there. Okay, so if you struggle to make a guess, just write something down. Strategy, wild, random guess. Sure. Maybe you did something else. Okay, ready for my other estimate? All right, so I'm going to make some notes for my estimate, and I'm going to try not to use a calculator. So first thing that's important is I'm trying to estimate how much it'll cost, and I'm given that for cost. All right, so on my paper, I would write something like cost, $3.50. And I mentioned this before in class, it's super important to write shit down on paper because that frees your brain to think about it. If you're trying to hold all of that in your head and think about it, that's too much load on your brain. And you choke up. At least I do. All right, cost is $3.50. $3.50 what? $3.50 per gallon. Okay, per gallon. So every time she uses a gallon of gas, it's another $3.50 she's got to pay. Right? How many gallons of gas might she use? Well, I guess that depends on how far she goes, right? Okay, how far does she got to go?
193. Only one way though.
That's only one way. She's got to get her butt home. Okay, so I'm just like 193. That's a weird number. I'm just going to call it 200.
Do we also calculate how much she'll be driving within wherever she's at?
That is a thing, but at the moment they're just saying get there, get back. So we're going to ignore that she's got to drive around when she gets there. We're just going to say she only's got to do the 193. Now again, 193 is a weird number, so I'm just going to round that to she's got to drive 200 miles there, about, and 200 miles back, so that's about 400 miles total. For her Forerunner, I'm going to just round that to about 22 miles per gallon. Oh, no, 20, sorry, it says 22. I'm going to go 20. It's an easier number. So every 20 miles she goes, there's another gallon. Or another 350, right? Because every gallon's 350. So then I'm asking myself, okay, how many times is she going to go 20 miles on this trip? Wouldn't that be 400 divided by 20? So 2 goes into 4 twice. So 20 goes into 420 times. 2 times 2 is 4 with 2 zeros. Yeah, that looks right. So 20 times she's going to use a gallon, which means 20 times she's got to pay 350. 20 times 350. Can I do that in my head? Well, 10 times 350 would be what? Oops, 350 would be 35. She's got a 20, so That should be about 70. So this is a better guess. I had to work pretty hard to get it though. But that's my brain thought to get that. Could I have made that guess without writing all of this down? No, I cannot do that in my head. There's a few amazing people around the world that can do that stuff in their head. I ain't one of them. I got to write stuff down. All right, so 50 bucks, 70 bucks, they're in the same ballpark, although, 20 bucks, if I lose 20 bucks, I'm gonna miss it. So it's close, but not close enough. So what? This was an estimate. This is another estimate. Is it right? Maybe. I don't know. I haven't actually done the real calculation yet. Questions about my second guess here? So my second guess was $70. And this mess here is me trying to explain my reasoning. So much for better penmanship. But this is my first draft, right? I'm not going to hand this to my English teacher. I'm going to try and write it down on a piece of paper. And I'm going to write this more neatly when we do the actual calculation in a minute. All right, based on my guess, anyone want to make a guess on the Hyundai? My revised guess. So I have a revised guess for the Toyota, 70 bucks for the trip. Guess on the Prius, not the Prius, the Elantra. Elantra should do better, right? How much better? Somebody compare for me.
I guess that it was like half.
Yeah, right. It's going to be like half because the Hyundai gets twice as good gas mileage. Excellent. Good job. Yeah. So based on my guess for the Toyota of 70, about half of that would be like 35. So I would guess the Hyundai gets it's going to take about 35 bucks in gas to get there. Okay. So again, if you're not sure about my second guess, something like my first wild guess is fine. We're going to move on to the actual calculation next. So I'm going to get a new piece of paper to do that. And later, you may need to write a little more explanation about what you did. That's fine. Don't forget to come back to it. All right, so I'm going to bring this to a new clean piece of paper because I messed up that one. So now we're actually going to do the calculation. Lots of ways to do this. I'm going to explain my strategy here, which is related to what I just guessed at. And Campbell, I'll post this recording after. Yeah. All right, so we want to actually calculate the gas for the trip. And I'm just going to split my paper here because I got to do a calculation for the Toyota, and I got to do another calculation for the Hyundai. So side note is the 193 from home and then return means the total miles is 193 times 2, and it's calculator time. Desmos are your favorite calculator. Oops, wrong. Sorry, wrong Desmos. What is it?
386.
386. Okay. All right. So 386 miles is the round trip, and we're not going to worry about any driving around she has to do where she is. We're just going to say, hey, this is what matters most. All right. So I know what the trip is. I need to convert that to the cost. Right? I have the miles, I need to know the cost. That's just a unit conversion like we've been doing. So for the Toyota, we want to convert miles to money. We're going to start with 386 miles. And to do a conversion, you remember my method? It's to create a fraction to multiply by. Okay. So my fraction, if I want to get rid of miles, has to have times their miles in the bottom. And let's see, other information I know, I'm just gonna write it off to the side here. Gas is $3.50 per gallon. So $3.50 is equal to 1 gallon. I'm gonna write it that way. And then the Forerunner, which is the Toyota I'm on now, gets 22 miles per gallon, which means for the Toyota, 22 miles is equal to 1 gallon. Which of these facts here is going to help me get rid of miles? Which one has miles in it? Well, it would be the gas mileage. So this right here tells me that I can convert miles to gallons by putting miles in the bottom. So those cross out, putting gallons in the top. And 22 goes with the miles and 1 goes with the gallon. What's the point of the fraction? The point of the fraction, it tells me whether I should multiply or divide by a given number. Since this is in the bottom, it's saying I should divide by 22. Compare that to my estimate before. I did a division here to figure out how many gallons I was going to need. All right, so I think I'm on the right track there. What is my goal here? Is it gallons or cost?
Gallons.
All right, what is the cost? My goal is to find the cost. So I'm not done yet. I have gallons. So I'm going to multiply by another fraction because I got to get rid of gallons. So I've used this, I've used that. It's time to use that fact right there. And that fact said that 1 gallon is the same as $3.50. And so that's going to let me get rid of gallons. And the only thing not crossed out is money. So I met my goal there. So on my calculator, this says, take the 386, divide by 22, and then multiply by 3.5. And that should give me the cost that I want. So whip out your calculator, give that a try. All right, so I got my 386 there. I'm supposed to divide by 22, arrow out, multiply by 3.5. And I'm getting about $61.41.
Yep.
I guess 70. Oh, not too bad.
Yeah.
A little overestimate, but that's right. I guess 50 before that. Oh, kind of in between.
About 70.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so now we want the actual answer, and the actual answer here would be 61.41 from this calculation. So we just figured out, no, 4.1, because we want dollars and cents.
Oh, you go up.
Right, and that 9 next to the 0 says round that 0 to a 1. Yeah, so it's technically 61.41. All right, so our calculation leads to 61.41. And again, we got rid of miles, we got rid of gallons, so that's got to be dollars, which is cost. Have I shown my strategy?
Yes.
Yeah, so you should write something just like that. If you didn't write this down yet, I'm going to give you a minute, write that down. Exactly like that. And then I want you to try and repeat this for the Hyundai. So I'm going to let you try that, and then I'll catch up and we'll compare notes. Okay, so here's my work for the Hyundai. Starting off again, 386 miles. My goal is to get to cost. And the only thing I'm missing here is I didn't write this down explicitly, but it's the same idea that I did there with just a different amount. So this has miles in it, so that's going to help me get rid of miles here. Miles has to go in the opposite position. Gallons then gets to go in the other position. And for the Hyundai, it's 40 miles to 1 gallon. And the point of that is that allows me to cross out miles, which tells me again, if I want to make the conversion, I divide by 40, not multiply by 40, because it's in the bottom. That gets me to gallons, but I want cost. So again, I got to do multiply by a fraction. Gallons is in the top. To get rid of it, it's got to go in the bottom. Dollars can go in the top. And we know for this situation, it's 350 for every gallon. Now gallons is gone and I have my cost. So then I throw that in my calculator. Very similar to what I did with the Toyota, just one different number. 386 round trip miles divided by 40 miles per gallon. So I want to know how many groups of 40 are in 386. There's almost 10 of them. Times the gas of 350 per gallon gives me what? 33. Well, to the nearest cent.
3378.
Be 78, 3378.
So the five and higher is always.
Yeah, the 5 tells me to round that 7 to an 8. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything lower than that is. always-
Zero digits 0 through 4 say leave it alone.
Stay-
5
keep
through
it
9
safe.
say bump it up.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is 3378. I've got about $33.78. Okay, which is a little more than half of what the Toyota, right? We were thinking half. We were planning on this. Okay, moving on. Who's next for us? All right, here's where things get exciting. Jenna's Toyota. All right, so we've dealt with the gas part. So I'm just going to put a little check there. Oh, sorry, this isn't Jenna's car. This is the rental car. Okay. 193 miles. That's one way, so I'm going to rhyme myself. Times 2 equals 386 miles. Otherwise, I'm very absent-minded and we'll start using the 193 accidentally. So I recommend you make that note too. We know the gas mileage. We played with that earlier. All right, so then I asked you earlier to think, well, what's it going to cost to rent the car? That was like question 1 or 2 there. So thinking about it and seeing this now, well, she's going to have to pay for the gas. She's going to pay whatever the rental fee is. And in some states, she's going to pay tax on top of that. Right? In Oregon, there's no tax to rent a car, but if you go to Washington, there is. I went to Rhode Island to visit my family this summer. There was a tax on the rental car there. So I had to pay the rental fee and taxes, plus whatever gas I used. So we have that it's going to cost $98.98 plus 15.3%, and then the gas. So we're pretty close to making this calculation. We just got to deal with the tax. So I'm just going to make some notes here. Gas from question number 3 is 3378. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Cool. Rental is 98. Oops, that's not 8. And the only thing I don't have now is tax, and we can figure out the tax. Tax is, so I just need to whip out a calculator and figure that out on the calculator. 2 ways to do that, depending on your calculator. Desmos has a % button, so I could use that, but first I'm going to do it without. Without, I want to take my 98 and multiply that by 15.3%. Percent means divide by 100, so I'm just going to write 15.3 out of 100, because percent means out of 100. So that's one way to do it, and I get the tax should be $15.14. If your calculator has a percent button, then you could type something like 15.3, click the percent button, and then type the number you want the percent of. And I should get the same answer. Okay. So most of my calculators don't usually have a percent button. I forget, as most does all the time, because I'm just in the habit of when I see a percent, I think divide by 100. So 1514 is our tax. All right, did I use all the information I was given? Let's say I used the price of gas from problem 3 and the mileage and the total miles. I used the rental car cost and I used the tax, and then it says I got to deal with the gas, which I just did. I think I got everything. This is the rental car cost. What do we get? The 8 and 8 is 16 and 4 is 20.
The gas we calculated was for there and back. This is, I think, only asking for one way.
No, because up here they want the total cost for the round trip.
How did you do that tax again?
So yeah, anytime tax is always just multiply.
Okay.
Yeah, so for that one right there, I'll just
98.98
yeah times multiply by 15.3 as a percent, divide by 100. So again, I'll just repeat that, right? 98.98 times 15.3, and then to make that a percentage, I just divide by 100 because percent means out of 100.
Okay, that's what I did wrong.
Yeah, so I have to do 15.3 out of 100, then times the amount, so that gives me the $15.14. And again, fine print here, although one way it is 193, we want the total cost, which is a round trip. So we have to use the full gas amount we calculated earlier. So I think I'm going to get what? Next column, 19, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 17, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I'll double check on a calculator, but I'm getting 147.90. Anyone else get that? Anna, is that what we get? You're a little different? Okay, what did you get?
146.86 cents.
Oh, okay, so I made a mistake somewhere.
I got 138.16.
Oh, we're getting a bunch of different numbers. All right, let's go double check. All right, so let's see. All right, so let's see. Did I get the 3378 correct? Yeah, that's what we calculated here. So I have that right. And then 98.98. Okay. And then 1540. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to my calculator and double check those. On the calculator, if I put all those together, I've got my 33.78.
I got 147.99.
And then I got my 98.98. Then I've got my 1514. Oops. Decimal points matter. Okay, so I'm getting the 147.
Why are we subtracting the tax?
We're adding the tax because you have to pay that in addition.
It looked like a minus symbol.
Nope, we're adding. So where does it look like a minus symbol? On this screen here?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, it's a plus right there. Yeah, so 147.90. Now, if you used unrounded numbers, which is fractions of a cent, you're going to get a slightly different answer. Probably. But based on just dollars and cents, it should be 147.90.
Yep, got it.
Okay.
That's what I got. Yeah.
All right.
I missed it. I missed putting the 4 in.
So that's on Desmos, right, where it won't calculate almost, like it just rounds that 0 to it, right?
Well, Desmos just called it a 9. It doesn't know we're talking about cents. But
Oh,
since we're talking about 90 cents, not dollars and cents, I should call 0.9 90 out of 100. Yeah, so you should put that 0 in there. Okay, so this is the rental car cost. Total rental car cost. Gas, rental, plus tax. Next one is Jenna's car. That one's a little more complicated.
Yeah, she got a lot of stuff going on.
She's got a lot of stuff going. All right, so I'm gonna go get the, oops, wrong button. Let's go get the next page. Okay. And on my little page, I'm probably gonna need another page to figure this out.
So can we take like from, like we did the Hyundai? Since we already know it's gonna cost $61.41.
Yeah, so we
We
have
can
some of
start
this
with that,
figured out,
right?
right? We know we've got this part done. We've got the gas.
Right.
Right, so I'm just gonna make a note here, a couple things. Miles, I want to remind myself that is ×2, because I want the total cost for the round trip. And that was, what did we say, 386?
Yeah.
So make a note of that here. Otherwise, if you're like me, you're gonna forget it and get half what you're supposed to. 386 miles. So I've got that part covered. So next I need to factor in 4 other things. I've got to figure out how to deal with her insurance registration and taxes, how to deal with her general maintenance cost, the cost of her tires, and the cost of repairs. And the usual way accountants do this for business is they just pull all that together and basically get a per mile cost for using this vehicle. So that's our goal. I'm just going to make a note of this. Our goal is to find a per mile cost for this vehicle. So with that goal in mind, I'm going to review again the gas. And I'm going to do that because I have the total gas cost. I didn't come up with a per mile cost for gas. So I'm going to review that. All right, so we're going to start with the gas. And what do I know about the gas? So a per mile cost means I'm trying, for every one of these instances, I'm trying to come up with some amount of dollars per mile. So I'm going to ignore the total trip for a minute. So for gas, give me what's the dollar amount for gas? You look at the fuel, you pull up to the gas station. The gas station says how much? $3.50, right? So for gas, my numerator is $3.50. I want to know not how much per gallon, but how much per mile. Well, let's see. I know that she's driving her 4Runner, and her 4Runner gets 22 miles per gallon. If I look back at my calculation for that over here, didn't I end up dividing by 22? Right? So in my calculation here, I should divide by 22. Because 22 is a mile amount. In a homework or prep problem, you were asked about unit rates. Unit rate means the denominator is 1. What's my denominator here? 22. To make that a 1, I just do the actual division. And my decimal place isn't very visible there. Let's draw it in. Come on. Decimal place there. There we go. So on my calculator, I'm going to type 3.5 divided by 22. $3.50 or 3.5 divided by 22, 0.159, blah, blah, blah. Now, this is a dollar per mile, so technically I would say it's about 16 cents. Do those 0.9s matter? Well, yeah, when you use a pump, they keep track of a lot of decimals on that pump. So I'm going to actually use an extra decimal here. I'm going to keep track of the 9, the third decimal place here. So I'm going to call it 0.159. So I'm going to say, and I'm rounding still, but I'm just going to say this is about 0.159. And again, that is dollars per, oops, that's not a 9, mile. Let's try that again. 6. There we go. My brain was dying to round that to 16 cents, I guess. Okay, so write that down. You didn't already. Next, we're going to do the insurance, registration, and taxes. So I'm just going to call it insurance plus. Okay, do we have a dollar amount in that paragraph?
2,000 a year.
2,000, okay. So we're going to put $ 2,000 here. Do we have a mile amount in that paragraph?
21,600.
Yeah, so this says in a given year, she spends about $2,000 on these expenses, and in a given year, she drives about 21,600 miles. So my goal is to find dollars per mile, and I was given dollars per mile. $216. So let's, yeah, I'll whip that out on your calculators. What happens if we do that? So let's $2,000 divided by 21,600 miles. Yeah, 0.9259. And I decided to do 3 decimal places. So that would be what? 0.93?
Yeah.
Because the 5 says bump that 2 up. So this is approximately 0.093 dollars per mile for that expense. On average in a year. All right, so that's covered, that's covered. General maintenance, I'm just going to call that maintenance. And let's see, they give me a dollar amount. They say she spends about $40 every 3,000 miles. So I'm just going to write the fraction. $40 over 3,000 miles. And then I'm going to see what my calculator thinks about that. And then I'm going to do that for tires, and I'm going to do that for repairs. Oops, I put a dollar sign on that. Desmos did not like that. 40 over 3,000, make sure I typed it right. Make sure I'm reading it right, like the other day, 40 divided by 3,000. 0.13333, so 0.013. And again, do this on your calculator too. Because when I'm not around, you have to be the master of your calculator. And I make mistakes. So please confirm I'm not making a mistake here.
You're not.
Thank you, Richard. Okay, so calculator says 0.013 per mile. All right, I'm running out of room. I got to move to a new screen. Or I wonder if I can scroll on here. Oh, I can't. Oh my gosh, I didn't know that. All right.
You could also scroll out.
Oh, like zoom in and out, maybe? Oh yeah, there is a zoom button on there. I'm glad someone's paying attention. I'm not going to zoom out because I think that's, I don't want to write
Yeah, I
small.
might mess it up too, plus I don't.
Yeah, okay, so let's see, tires is next. And let's see. Tires for Jenna's car cost $920. They're supposed to be replaced every 50,000 miles. Right, and I don't know, has anyone bought tires recently?
No.
Last time I bought tires, I went to Les Schwab because I saw they had a blowout on my Subaru and they said you got to replace all four. And they said, okay, you can buy the 40,000 mile tire, the 50,000 mile tire, the 70,000 mile tire, and the price kept going up, right? It was like 600, 800, 1,000, 1,500. It was like, oh, help me. So Jenners are 920 and they're supposed to be good for 50,000 miles. So write it down as a fraction, 920 over 50,000. And whip it out on the calculator. Then we'll do our repairs, which on average, according to some website, Edmunds.com, it's for this vehicle, it's about $328 per year. If the person drives about 1,500 miles, 15,000 miles per year. So for that one, I'm getting 328 over 15,000. And I want 3 decimal point approximations for each of these on my calculator. Let's see, 018-ish. All right. 328, 15,000. Okay. .022. Sound good? 2.2 cents per mile. And we're going to use a third decimal point like we did with the other one, just to be consistent. Decimal point there, dollars per mile.
Oh, the 8 tells you different.
Yeah. So yeah, let's double check that. Yeah, so I was looking for 3 decimal places there, and the 8 says bump that up. I would say 0.022. So all of these things combined are my average cost per mile when gas is about $3.50. So if I add those all up and multiply by some number of miles, that'll give me the total cost. So that's our next step. We want to add all those up, and then we can multiply by our 386 miles. And that should give us the cost of running. So I'm going to pause here and let you do that part and see if we can agree on it. Okay, so here's what I got when I added those up. I got 0.305 per mile. Right, so that's dollars per mile. And I want to multiply that by the number of miles, which is 386. And when I do that multiplication, I get $117.73. There are other right answers to this, which I'll show in a second. But that's one possible answer for the cost of driving her car on this trip. All right, so I'm going to show you my calculator, and then I'm going to show something else. Let's see, you go here. Yeah, so on my calculator, I just retyped those numbers we calculated. The 0.159, the 0.093, 0.013, 0.018, 0.022, and that gave me about 31 cents per mile driven. Multiply that by the number of miles, 386, and I get $117.73. Now, when I went to school, I was told avoid rounding as much as possible. Okay. If I take that mindset, I just rounded 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times to get this answer, which means I could have introduced a bunch of rounding error. Okay, so what could I have done different? So again, this is a fine answer. So if you'd like to just hum and ignore me for a minute, what I'm going to say next, feel free, walk away. I could add up the fractions. So my first fraction was 350 per 22 miles for gas. And then, let's see, I got to look at this on the side to get these right.
2,000.
And then it was $2,000 per 21,000 miles roughly. Yeah, so I can just write the next fraction was 2,000 divided by 21,600.
And the next one was 40
Next one was 40 over
divided
3,000. Okay, and
20. 50,000. Next one's 28 divided by 15,000.
and we get pretty close to the same answer. That's not bad. Now, if I had rounded to the nearest cent, I probably would have been a bit more off. Right, so it just depends on how you round it. So, and if I take that number unrounded, oops, shit, wrong button, sorry, shoot. Enter, answer times the 386, 117.84 versus 117.73, we're a few cents off. Which is the better answer? Well, are those figures right here exact numbers?
No.
No. Exact numbers would be Jenna shows us all of her bills, right?
Yeah.
These are estimates of what she would spend in an average year, but every year is different. I have a 1996 Honda Accord. I bought it new. I still have it. I went 5 years without putting a dime into it. No, that's not true. I did gas and oil. And then something wasn't right. I took it to my mechanic and he said, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, and this is wrong. $2,000. Like, oh, I love the car. Fine. It's a stick shift. Fun to drive. It's got emotional value too. I've had it since before my kids were around.
Still, that's not bad, but it's only $2,000.
I mean, it's still
Yeah, it was $2,000. I hadn't done anything in 5 years.
Yeah.
It's like, and
Pretty good.
before that, I think I did brakes maybe, which was like a few
I
$100.
always say too, like I always think the older year models always outrun these newer ones.
It's still, it's 28 years old now and it still gets like 30 miles per gallon.
that
It's
too.
a fun car. I love it. My daughter calls it the ghetto car because it looks a little rough. Could use a paint job, but It rhymes. Okay, so we did it. We did that estimate for Jenna's car. So let's compare for a second here. What did we do? Where's my notes? Not there. There they are. $117.73 for her car. If we factor in all of her other stuff, we got $147.90 for the rental car. Okay, so now here's the other catch though. That's more wear and tear on her car. It's an older car.
The payments.
Like it's an older car. So when we go on a trip, I want to drive my Accord. My wife's like, no, we're taking the Subaru because the Subaru is newer. Like she's worried something's going to go wrong on my old car if we take a long trip. So she doesn't trust it. And so maybe Jenna's thinking, yeah, I like my 4Runner, but I'm a little worried about this. 147 is not a lot more depending on your budget. Sometimes it is. There's something we still haven't taken into account. Let's go back. Question? Yeah, that's what we didn't take into account. The boss is going to reimburse. So I asked you to read the first paragraph, but I didn't read it out loud. Going back here, she's going to get reimbursed at 57.5 cents per mile. That was the IRS reimbursement rate a few years ago.
They'll still make more money on the rental.
So let's see what is her boss going to reimburse her? Okay, so new page for that. So let's see, I'm going to steal this. Bring it to a new page. Okay, so we still haven't taken that into account, and there's a next question about this. So let's see, 57.5 cents. Let's write that as dollars. As dollars, that would be 0.575 per mile. If we multiply that by the 386 miles, right, that's going to give me the cost, or the reimbursement she's going to get. All right, calculate a time. 0.575 times 386, 221.95. So let's see. I could take the 4Runner as Jenna and get, on average, it's going to cost me 117, but they'll give me 221. I'm going to make like $100 and get to pay off some of my expenses like insurance and registration and tires, get a little money back for that. Plus I got another $100 to put more toward that, or have a nice dinner while I'm in maybe Seattle. That'd be nice. Or I could take the rental car and still have like, what, $70-ish left over to use for expenses. So she could go either way, given that reimbursement there. All right, let's see what other questions we have to answer. Yeah, okay, so that's a good question. Let's go back to that. Over here. So here, they're telling me it's 57.5 cents, right? I wanted to rewrite that as dollars, right? So if we ignored the 0.5 for a second, 57 cents is $0.57, right? And then I just throw that 5 back on the end.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where I got that from.
Let's say confused on that.
And you might say, well, let's just round it to 58 cents, but that's not what the boss is paying.
Yeah, it's only.
It's a half, they're using that half cent. Yeah, so I gotta keep that there. All right, so what was that? That was 221.95. But she's going to get reimbursed. Okay, where are we on the lesson? Back here. All right, so we answered question 5. All right, so this is an opinion piece by you. Question 6, which would you recommend to Jenna? that she rent a car or use her own car for the trip? Explain why you meant that. So it's up to you. You can go either way. Like I gave my kind of pros and cons there. I'm curious about your pros and cons on that. No right or wrong answer, just don't leave it blank. Of reimbursement. Okay. And at times, because I was given money per mile, multiplying by miles gives me money. And the miles goes away. If you're done with your opinion for question 6, take a look at question 7 and think about that for a sec. Put that, how many, right, 5, you want that? Yes, one line. Good one. All right, question 7. Suppose Jenna will be taking a series of trips of varying length. Maybe instead of driving 386 miles, which is like almost similar to from Pendleton to Seattle, maybe she wants to drive to San Diego. That's about 1,100 miles. And we'll be using her own car for these trips. She wants to know the cost per mile. Holy moly, we did that. Yeah, I mentioned when we did that first part about finding her mileage, there's many ways to do that problem. We could have, instead of finding the cost per mile, just found the cost for 386 each time. That would have been another way to do it, different set of steps, but we get the same answer. I read ahead, so I thought, hey, let's just do this now. So for part B, it says to write an expression for the cost per mile for her car using these trips. Define any variables you use. Okay, I kind of did that. Let's see if I go back here. This one right here. My variables were the gas, the insurance, maintenance, the tires, and the repairs. And I put them all together. So I get 2 options for this question. If you wrote it down nice and neatly as I did, if you think my work was neat, some days I don't think my work is neat, you can just say, C question, what was that? C question 5. Boom, done. Okay. If you want to write it a little different, then I'll show a way to do that. And notice they're talking about here the cost per mile, which is what we did. Now I'm ignoring question A for a moment. I'll come back to that. So if I wanted to rewrite it, I could do something like this underneath. I could write gas. Oops, gas is 1S these days. 350 per 22 miles. And then insurance. And I could write my, what was that? I think it was like 2,000 for 21,600. And what was next?
Oh, repair and maintenance,
Maintenance.
and then
And
tires,
that maintenance was what?
Um,
40 out of,
oh, maintenance was 40 over
3,000?
3,000.
then we had tires,
Was 920 over 50,000.
920, 50,000.
And then repairs was 328 over 15,000.
328?
Yeah.
15,000. So if you wanted to write something else, you could write it up like this, or you could just say C question 5. And then we found that this came out to be about 305.
Yes.
Zero. We had zero.
But we had all that on the other page too. So the two options, you could write something else down here like that, or you could just say C question 5. And then write it's about 31 cents per mile. And then I have some ideas for question A, but I'm curious about you all. Do you have some ideas for question A? What factors that affect the cost per mile might change over the course of a month?
Price of gas.
Yeah, so gas is one of them for sure.
Maintenance.
Yeah, it could be maintenance. She had some new expense and that on average changes her average expense. So yeah, there's lots of things that can change.
I put like more wear and tear on the car, which would create more maintenance.
Yeah, age or use of car. So I guess I would say use of car, huh?
Yeah.
Wear and tear, use of car. Oh, and let's see, wear, that's the right one, right? Tear,
Because their miles per gallon might go down too.
use of
Age
car,
engine.
yeah. But there's lots of things. So you don't have to write everything I'm writing. I'm just kind of taking into account what you guys are telling me here. Gas mileage might change, or what do they call that? Fuel economy. Also another way to say that. Gas mileage, which is also called fuel economy, might change. Like when my Honda Accord was newer, I was getting like 32 miles per gallon. Now I get like 28, 29 miles per gallon. I get it tuned up regularly, but it's still not what it used to be. Yeah, other things that might change. Another thing I was thinking of, the month she goes might matter. Driving in the winter is different than driving in the summer or the fall or the spring. So the season can affect things. Like in the summer, I might be cranking the AC. That's going to drop my gas mileage. In the winter, I've got rough roads to deal with. All right, let's see. I think we're almost done. What factors that affect the cost per mile might Jenna be able to change over the course of a year or longer? Ooh, what could she change?
Less driving,
She could drive less, yeah.
keep the maintenance up for sure.
Keep the maintenance up, right? Because that's definitely going to affect gas mileage. Yeah, that too. Yeah, so there's a bunch of things that you could write down for that one.
Conserving gas.
Yeah, there's ways to drive, yeah, that conserve gas. That is true, right? Yeah, if you just got that pedal pushed and you're hoping the state police don't pull you over at 80, 85, that's different than driving 60, 65, 70. You're going to use more gas when you try to drive that fast.
Spending expenses.
Yeah, then there's other expenses like during the trip.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Insurance variation.
Yeah, and the further application, we did it mostly because we took into account that reimbursement. So there's really nothing you need to do there. That's optional. But we did it anyway already. Because we took into consideration her reimbursement. Boom, done. Woo!
Can you go back to A?
Yeah. Oh, my version of A?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.